Recorded live.
Welcome to Dreamlist Radio, aim to inspire you to follow I'm your host, Melissa Borcourt, life coach, motivational speaker, and author of the Dreamlist Photo Journal series. Please visit dreamlistmedia.com to find tips and advice to help make your dreams come true, and to sign up for my free newsletter to receive the latest news, specials, and for a dose of inspiration. Today I have Susanna Zaleski with me, who wrote the book Travel Happy, Budget Low, 190 Money-Saving Tips to See the World. She's going to share tips and secrets from her book and show you how to travel on a budget. Now, Susanna grew up in California in a low-income Soviet immigrant family. With determination and a bit of creativeness, she has traveled to over 50 countries, lived in 9 countries, and speaks 7 languages. Susanna is passionate about sharing her experience and belief that no matter one's economic status, anyone can see the world. So welcome, Susanna. Thank you for joining me on Dreamlist Radio.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
So first off, tell me more about that background, the traveling background. You've been to many different places, it sounds like.
I sure have. It's been 51 countries that I've traveled to and 9 countries that I've lived in. And I think one of the main motivators was that, like you mentioned, I was born in the Soviet Union and I came to the United States when I was 3. And in the Soviet Union, my parents traveled, but they were very rare because most people weren't allowed to travel, but my parents did either for work or they applied to go on these vacations, on these like group tours around the former Soviet Union. So when they came to the United States, they were very keen on seeing as much as possible. And as soon as we got U.S. passports, we went to Mexico. And I was about 10 years old when I went to Mexico, and I saw the pyramids and the Diego Rivera murals in Mexico City. So I think coming from a family that had a hunger and thirst due to living under Soviet repression, that had a lot to do with my own wanderlust.
Right. So you just really kind of made that happen. How did you financially make all those trips and things happen?
That's a good question. They all came differently. I studied abroad when I was in high school. I was a foreign exchange student in France. I lived with a French family. So obviously I was living in a family, so it wasn't an expensive venture. And then when I was in college, I did an internship in France. I studied abroad for a semester in Budapest, and then I got a scholarship from the Rotary Foundation, and I was a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar in Argentina. And I didn't have a car. I didn't own a car until I was 27 years old, believe it or not, a Californian without a car.
Wow.
And, yes, I knew the bus system very well. I had a bicycle. So I spent my money on traveling, and I learned how to buy cheap tickets. I was very good at accruing frequent flyer miles so I could travel. And I also learned that, you don't always need to eat 3 meals a day when you're traveling. Sometimes you can just buy trail mix or nuts and fruit, and that could be your dinner. I mean, it depends. Some people get really hungry in the morning, and some people can skip dinner. So I realized what my body needed, and I just accommodated to it.
So that brings me to my next question. You mentioned frequent flyer miles, and so your book is broken into a bunch of different chapters on ways to budget, whether it's transportation or food or lodging. So let's kind of talk about some of those tips. One chapter is on frequent flyer miles. What tips do you have on that?
Well, the main thing is, as much as possible when you're flying, try to stay with one airline and 1 or 2 airlines, because some of the airlines they're in different partnerships. So if you fly U.S. Airways, you can accrue those miles on United because they're in the Star Alliance. So if you want to stay within one group of airlines as much as possible, because that way your miles accrue faster. Another thing is that most people in the United States, for better or worse, have credit cards. And many of these airlines offer these credit card deals that if you sign up for their MasterCard or Visa or American Express or whichever mark they use, you get 15, 20, 25,000 bonus miles for that year. And many times they waive the annual fee for the first year.
Oh.
And so I've done that. And they usually say that, you can't close the credit card and then open another one within 6 months and get the bonus miles, but I've done it. And they usually, I think on one occasion I wasn't given extra bonus miles, but usually I have been. So I suggest that, as long as somebody has a good credit history. Now, if somebody is one of those Americans who doesn't know how to use a credit card and has a whole bunch of credit card debt, I don't suggest opening up a credit card just to get 20,000 bonus miles.
Right.
But if somebody's responsible, it's a good way of accruing miles, and then for each dollar that you spend, you get a mile of credit. So some people may, for their daily shopping expenses and gas and all that, they may spend $500 a month on their credit card. Well, that's 500 miles. So after 12 months, that's already 6,000 miles. So
right. I've even heard of people putting their mortgage, their home mortgage or their rent on the credit card, and then the next month just paying that off like a regular payment. So that builds it up.
Yeah, I tried to do that, but in California, I think it's illegal. So I don't really know if you can do it. Yeah. So
tips to check and make sure it's legal in your state.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a good one. And, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, continue on if you have more tips on frequent flyer.
Well, the other thing with frequent flyer miles is good to know. Sometimes the airlines have bonuses. Like, for example, if you fly this route between these 2 months, then you get more miles. Or I remember at one time United, with its Mileage Plus Visa, had something like when you spent money from, I think, Thanksgiving to New Year's, you got double miles because I wanted to encourage people to spend money during the holiday season. So if you get a notice from the credit card that's related to your frequent flyer mile account, that, keep in mind that next month we're going to give you double miles for your purchases. Well, if you have to make a major purchase, let's say you need to buy a new dishwasher, well, maybe wait a couple of weeks and spend that $800 when you're going to get more miles for your purchases. Gotcha.
So just kind of be aware. Now, how are you aware of these specials, the double miles, things like that?
Mm-hmm. I get notices by email from the frequent flyer mile programs I'm in, so from Delta and United. So they send me stuff all the time by email, and then they also send me by mail, the different promotions that they have going on. So that's how I keep up on things. And actually, another way to get miles is that usually with the frequent flyer mile programs, if you sign up to get online statements, then they usually give you like 500 or 1,000 extra bonus miles because they're trying to cut down on the paper that they send out and their postage fees. So they want to encourage people to check their mileage online.
Right. Okay, so it sounds like do some research on different mileage programs, things like that, and see what would be a fit for you. Now, going into transportation is always one of the most expensive costs out there. So flying, so you've obviously got frequent flyer miles to help save, but what are some other tips to save money on transportation?
Well, a big one that I tell people about is to look into the rail passes, especially if they're going to Europe. But there are rail passes for Amtrak in the United States. There's a rail pass for Rail Canada. And Japan has an expensive rail system. And I learned the hard way that it would have been better. I would have been better off had I bought a pass in the United States before I went to Japan. Now, with many of these passes, you do need to buy them in your home country or in the country in which you reside, because they're only available as tourist fares, and so you can't buy them in the country. So if you already are living in Europe and you realize that a Euro pass is to your advantage, then you need to have someone in the United States buy it for you and send it to you by mail. And one of the advantages with the rail passes, and I'll talk about Europe, is that they have a really great system that if you take a train after 7 p.m., after 1900 hours today, it counts as a train for tomorrow. So on your pass, you're supposed to write down the day that you're using the pass. Let's say you have 5 days in a month or something like that. And then when the conductor comes by, he or she stamps or punches that section of your pass. So what's really good is if you need to take an overnight train, let's say Milan to Paris. So you take the Milan to Paris train tonight at 8 p.m. and you arrive at, I don't know what time tomorrow morning, let's say 8 in the morning. And you know that you want to go somewhere outside of Paris for a day trip. Well, it's in your best interest to do it that day that you arrive because you can go on your train pass. It's not going to cost you anything more as long as you return by 7 p.m.
Oh, that's good. So day trips, if you are already using that pass, day trips on that specific day. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Any other tips for other forms of transportation?
Buses. In the United States, most people think about buses as just Greyhound. Well, there are actually quite a few different companies that are out there. There's the Megabus, which makes stops between major U.S. cities. There's an entire network in the United States of Chinatown buses. And I think it started maybe with the New York, Boston, New York, Washington, D.C. route on the East Coast, and it's super cheap, like $10 or $15, much cheaper than Amtrak. And now there are Chinatown bus routes all over the United States that go from Chinese grocery stores in one town to another Chinese grocery store in another town.